Okay. All right. So now, so we've been talking about um, counseling skills throughout the class, but now we're going to get into more detail. And I just want to just bring up again something we've been talking about all along. What are the primary counseling skills that we should all be developing and understanding? One, attending, really listening to the person's story. Two, listening, and understanding. And and then the third is understanding. That's what I'm trying to say. Gosh. Okay. Attending, listening, and understanding. Those are the three primary skills that we're going to build on from here on out. Okay. So we're going to start with attending again. All right. And I just want to bring up, why do I have an elephant eye or an elephant for this first slide on attending? It's because if you look at the life of an elephant, if there's something more emotional than humans, it is the life of an elephant. Their limbic system is oversized even for their weight. They are an emotional being, which brings up the idea of attending and mourning and grief and happiness and all of those things. And so when you think about attending, I want you to think about being elephant-like, being that person that wants to connect with someone so much that they're there, they're present, and they are totally emotionally invested in what is going on in your client's life. Okay. So let's go through this. Remember, we did the acronym for attending, but we're going to give it a little bit more definition. So if you remember, we went through the acronym encourages, but let's give attending a more specific definition. Being attentive means the counselor is giving the client's full focus, paying attention to what a client is saying, doing, the tone of the voice used, and the body language. Okay, so I'm going to just bring this up again. I've been bringing up a lot of my mistakes that I made in my counseling years and whatnot. Um, my biggest mistake that I have made in my professional career is not stop attending. It took a lot of years for me to understand how to attend, but then quickly I stopped, and it had detrimental effects not only on my clients but on myself. So I mentioned that I worked in the field of domestic violence. Okay. And in the field, there are people, men, women, victims, everyone who comes in, and we get this average statistic. They're going to come, they're going to leave, they're going to go back, leave, go back, leave, go back, on the average of seven. And there's usually a reason that they stay, whether it's sexual, financial, family, they always stay for some reason. They always come in with these emotional reactions. He loves me, but he doesn't. He loves me, he doesn't. Da 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 da. And I got to the point in my career when I was there where someone would come in, they would tell me their story, and I'd check off the check boxes. Yep, 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 yep. And then I would hand them the list of resources. Here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. This is what you have to do. Come to the shelter, you'll go back. I know. Da da da, da da da. And come and go, come and go. And I got to the point where I became a robot, where I didn't listen to the stories. I didn't listen to the experiences. I just was there. I was just this person to process the next one. I knew she was going to go back. So why should I spend the emotional resources? Let's give her the resources. Here you go. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Um, that ended for me with a domestic homicide. This person came to my office 3 times, came in, went, came in, went, came, and then it ended in a homicide. Not only a homicide, but a family side where the male took the life of the children and the female. And I was first call to the scene as the crisis interventionist. And I realized that person had sat in my office 3 times, and all I did was hand her the resources, took my notes, handed her the resources, took my notes. Attending is one of the most vital skills we have in this field because we all know if you're going into the addiction field, we know what addiction is. We know how people get into it. If you're going to go into the violence field, you know why people commit violence. You know why it is. If you're going to go into the criminal justice field, we know why people commit crimes. But, but the only solution to this is listening to the individual's lived experience. What did they go through? What is their experience? How are they living it? It may be the same as the last person you just saw in your mind, going back to emotional intelligence. But if I would have paid attention to the things that that client said, to the story that that person told me, instead of not attending, just filling in the blanks so I could get through this interview, so I could get through this assessment, so I could just get on to the next one. If I would have sat and listened, things might have been different. Do I blame myself? No, because that's what happens in our world. But does that weigh heavily on me in my heart and my mind? It did. And this is why this is an important part of this class. This is why it's an important part of therapist training. Learn to attend to people, regardless if you think it is the same thing day in and day out, day in and day. Pay attention. It's exhausting. It takes energy, but it's the only way we save lives in our field. Okay? So this is the definition of attending. And I do believe if I would have paid attention to that person's tone of voice the last time that I saw that person, and I paid attention to the body language, irregardless of, this is their reaction, I may have made a difference, but I didn't. Okay, this is the importance of attending. All right, being attentive means full focus and paying attention to what the client is saying, doing, the tone of their voice. Is it stressed or is it mild? Is it in their body language? Are they reacting to what you're saying? Um, Sometimes the greatest client breakthroughs is when a client says, you give them feedback and they don't agree with you verbally, but they do with their body language. So, for example, I have had clients who I go, is this what you're experiencing? Is this how you're feeling? And they'll do a wide stance. They'll go closer to me and go, no, that's not my experience. But what are they begging? When someone approaches you like that, they're asking you to tell them more. They're denying it in their mind. They're going, no, that's not me. But they want to know more. And that's when you go on, tell me more. Tell me more. Where am I going wrong? What am I not hearing? You tell me. That's the ability of attending. Okay. So, key competence of attending. We talked about, and we've already done this with encourages the acronym eye contact. We need to be aware of the cultural aspects of eye contact, but every human makes millisecond eye contact with another individual, regardless of culture. And you, as a therapist, as a group facilitator, need to be aware of that. If there is someone who makes zero eye contact, regardless of culture, there's something wrong with that situation. They should at least make a 0.15006 second eye contact with you in some time of your conversation with them, regardless of culture. Body language, are they approaching you or are they doing the fetal position? This is a thing that a lot of therapists make a mistake in. They think clients are making a breakthrough when they're getting stressed and they're curling up in the middle in the corner of the room, and our instant instinct is this going to be your breakthrough moment. It's not. You won't get a breakthrough. You will get them to repeat the behaviors they're already gone through. All right. It's only when a client is doing approach behaviors that they're open to what you say. All right. And you'll note this. And if you want to bet me on this, when you have a client stressed and they're in a fetal position, they're crying and they're mourning and everything else, and you're doing addiction recovery, come back to tell me how many didn't relapse after that session. If you can tell me they didn't relapse after that, I'll withdraw this idea about paying attention to body language because it doesn't. Okay, gestures, learning what your client's gestures are. And these are very much culturally based. And this is about learning your people, who you're working with. Um, when I started working at Tonatham Community College, the first thing that seasoned professors said, don't expect your students to smile, frown, talk, do anything until they feel you trust them. Or they trust you. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. And it was kind of strange because, I've taught for different colleges and universities. The one that is most stereotypical for me is when I taught in Montana. And on the first day, all the white people were like talking, asking questions, da da da, blah blah blah. When I did Arizona Western College, which is a majority Hispanic Mexican college, um, one, they just didn't show up on time. And don't get me wrong, that there's nothing wrong with that. But two, they were like, do you want a conversation or do you want an answer? And that's how they were. They were much more conversational. They wanted to have a conversation. They didn't want a question and answer. When I came to TOCC and some of my senior faculty said, hey, this is what you're going to experience, I was like, okay. And I did. And there were some classes where my students never answered any questions, which I feel was my responsibility. And but I never did a live class at TOCC where students ask questions on the first week. And that's okay. I'm not saying, but that's understanding gestures and body language, understanding who you're working with, and that you and if the body language and gestures is not matching you, it's not about you, it's not about them, it's about the situation, it's about the culture, it's about who you're working with and coming to an understanding of who you're working with. Facial expressions and tone of voice, all right? Those are all important points that we already talked about in the encourages example. Okay, so let's go on. So we're going to talk a little bit for the rest of class today about rapport building. All right. And if you remember in our earlier lectures, I talked about the idea of client-centered therapy. I talked about humanistic therapy, about gaining a therapeutic relationship with you and your client. Okay. And so we're going to go into this in more detail with rapport building. Okay. So let's give it a definition. To work well with a client, we need to establish rapport with them. What rapport is important, whatever model of counseling you use. So I mentioned that most counselors start with humanistic therapy. Why? Because it's all about building a relationship with your client. And if you use cognitive behavioral therapy, if you use EMT, if you use any of the other counseling techniques, they all really need to start with this rapport building. Rapport means a sense of having connection with that person. That when that client walks into your room, you remember them. You don't have to necessarily look at their file, which you should. Don't get me wrong on that. Or you don't have to go, okay, we met last week on Tuesday, right? No, it's rapport building is when you actually have that connection with them and they come into the office and you say, hey, how are you doing? It's good to see you. I remember last week we talked about that's rapport. Rapport will be helped and facilitated by how counselors manages their own feelings towards the client, emotional intelligence, and how they behave with the client. So you notice rapport. I just want to, I'm going to circle this because I think it's important. Rapport is not up to your client. Your client can hate you as much as they want to. They can think that you're the worst counselor in the world. They can think you are not the best social worker. But guess who that responsibility lays on? It doesn't lay on them, it lays on you and how you build that relationship with that person. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's one that needs to. It's on us, gang. We go into this field not expecting people to love us, but for us to care enough about people to get that relationship that will help. All right. Am I? Okay. So rapport building, being well prepared for a session. And this is what comes to the group level. You should never enter a group rushed. You should never enter a group with your own anxiety. Going into a group session, you're unrushed, you're calm, ready and prepared to be there for the client, putting their own issues and problems out of the way, putting your own issues, sorry, out of the way. Okay, this is where maybe one of the best things that a supervisor ever told me is when I was going into a therapy session and practicing and doing what a good student should do and practice, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, Curtis, what I want you to do is feel all of your life stress, all of your personal stress, all of your anxiety, and I want you to physically put your hand on your head as if you're grabbing all of those things and I want you to pull them out. And I want you to put them outside this door and just drop them there. And then I want you to walk in that door with that client and be there. And you can pick up your bills, your anxiety, your life stresses, your children's problems, your schoolwork, your job. You can pick those all up when you leave that session, right? That's one tool I hope that you can use if you have a lot of life stress and it gets involved in your work. Making safe and trusting environment, including taking the trouble to make the setting appealing. We've talked about that. Offering a restful, clean, uncluttered, and pleasant. Please, please, social workers in the class, don't don't overdo your office. I'm sorry, I'm being stereotypical with social workers because for some reason they love all these cutesy stuff everywhere. Don't do that. Okay, leave your office uncluttered so it allows the person to be comfortable. Comfy seating and perhaps a cup of tea. How many times have you guys went and bought a car that the car dealer didn't say, do you want a soda or do you want some water? Can I get you something? Why do you think they do that? I want you to think about that because it makes it so that they have an engagement with you, that you're giving something and you're going to expect them to give something. In this case, in the car dealership, it believe it or not, if you accept the soda pop at the car dealer, it increases the probability that you'll buy that car by 5 times. Offering that in the therapy session does the same. It means that your client will probably be engaged in your session by 5 times. So think about those things when you're thinking about trusting an environment. Being aware of who the client is, reviewing their record, reviewing who they are, remembering their name. This is okay. I'm gonna give another personal example. I don't remember names, um, like everyone else does. When I was young, the area of my brain that recognizes faces with names was damaged. Um, and so if you were to come to my house one day with a red shirt and you came over maybe for dinner or tea or coffee or something, and you just came over and you had a red shirt on, okay? The next day, if you came to my house with a blue shirt on, I couldn't remember your name because I can't, like human beings, I can't associate faces with names. So what I do is use other features of people, such as the color of their clothes or something else in order to remember names. Okay. And this is something that I had to learn very, very early on when I was doing therapy. Give yourself some mnemonics. Mnemonics are shortcuts in order to just identify someone and say, oh, okay, I remember them. This is their name. If you want to know what I use now, it's usually haircuts. So yes, when my students show up in class and they just had a haircut or they did something different with their hair, it messes with me. But that's my mnemonic because I can't do face recognition with me. Anyways, I'm giving too much information on my experience, but that's come up with ways to remember someone. Being aware of who the client is includes all follow-up sessions and everything else, okay? Okay, we mentioned empathy and emotional intelligence. So offering empathy, making the effort to be there with and for the client and try to see how the client feels and sees things. This isn't, I want you to practice something. If you're working in a field where you have no experience, I want you to practice this term. You should actually do it with everyone, but I want you to practice this so it becomes natural for you. Is I have never experienced what you experience, but I'm feeling a lot of what you're feeling. And can I express to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this what you're experiencing? So what you're saying in that moment, you're not denying their experience and say, oh, everyone goes through that. I've gone through that. Oh, I understand it. Oh, because of my degree, my intelligence, blah, blah, blah. I get it. What you're doing is saying, I've never been in your shoes, but I feel your shoes. Can I experience it more so I understand it? All right. Having accepting manner, including remaining unshocked, whatever the client brings up. In my field that I worked in, the main thing that people go through trauma do when they're faced with a counselor who is just sitting there is they amplify their trauma. They say, "Oh, I didn't get a reaction out of that. So let me give more detail. Let me get more graphic. Let me get this much more. And let me get this person to understand what I'm going through." All right. And so this is what this is coming down to is having an accepting manner is and having empathy is understanding that you may not have experienced, but telling your client that you feel what they're feeling, not at their level, not at their trauma, not at where they're coming from, but you feeling them. You're and you're trying to understand them. Okay. Being unrushed, allowing client time, letting clients stay with whatever feelings come up. Uh, um, we're going to talk probably next week because we're getting near time. We only have about 30 minutes left. We're going to talk about silence. All right. Um, I know in our field, especially if we're in social work, we have to meet, and a lot of times it's like we have to meet a quota, right? We have to see our 60 clients in a week. And that's a reality for a lot of social services people. Um, But if you want to make it so your caseload goes down, allow clients time. Um, I've sat in an office when I asked some very poignant questions, and I've sat in an office for 20, 30, 40 minutes where a client was just there silent and they were processing or they were crying and they couldn't stop crying. They couldn't they were processing that question. Allow that time because in the end, those tend to be your most successful sessions that you'll ever have. And guess what? I know this sounds um, technical. I know it sounds um, cold. That'll reduce your caseload if you take that time. Being congruent, being honest in a well considered and kindly way, and not being brutally honest in confrontation or rude, especially during rapport building. If you look at cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the main tools of cognitive behavioral therapy is challenging thinking, challenging the client's way of thinking. But in even the most standardized cognitive behavioral therapy, they leave that at the end. You don't start with challenging a client's thoughts. You don't start with those things. You accept where the client is, you build that rapport, and only after you have built that rapport with them are they able to accept your challenges. And this is the idea of being brutally honest. Do not start with, well, it sounds like you should have done this. Well, it sounds like what you're thinking is faulty. No, that's not where we start. It may be a period down the road where we say, do you remember when you told me about this? I want to go back to that and look at the way you were thinking about that. But it's only until you have built the rapport with the client that you can ever challenge their thoughts, think that they're thinking wrong, or have problems with their memory. Okay. Only until after you built rapport. Okay. 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 Oh, it looks like we might finish a little early, game. So I want to leave silence because it's a whole entire lecture in and of itself. So I'm going